I played a game recently named Lost Records Bloom and Rage. Or well, I played the Bloom part, as it is a game that is released episodically, in 2 episodes in this case. And while the game is not bad, with good voice acting, nice characters, and an overarching interesting mystery, it does really suffer from its release format. So while I can't review this game yet, because the latter half of it isn't gonna release till April, I want to use this chance to talk a little bit about episodic gaming. First of all, of course, what is episodic games? It's what the name implies. It is a game, a singular story, released over several chapters. It is not like a trilogy or a series of games with an overarching narrative, but each game is their own story. Instead, this is a singular game split into several parts, most commonly 5 parts. These were quite popular around the mid to late 2010s, with The Walking Dead, Life is Strange, and Bendy and the Ink Machine being kinda the most prominent ones. And with this release format gaining popularity, the indie market really fell in love with it, because it gives the opportunity of making the first part of a game and then promising to make the rest of it, but having the consumer pay for all of it. In fact, Steam is full of abandoned games where only chapter 1 has been made, and then maybe the game didn't get enough funding, the creator lost interest. It's hard to tell, but the final result is that the game is never finished. And it's not just games that are unsuccessful. One of my personal pet peeve in this genre is actually The Long Dark, an excellent survival game set in the Alaskan wilderness and one I have had a lot of fun with. But it was sold with the promise of the 5-chapter story mode called the Wintermute. And let's just say Wintermute is not exactly in a hurry in releasing, with episode 1 and 2 coming out in 2017, episode 3 in 2019, episode 4 in 2021, and episode 5 is promised to release at some point early this year. I am really hoping they will release it, but I don't know if I'm gonna play it anymore, because my interest has long faded. And that's part of the issue with episodic games. While in many cases the initial price does include the entire game, that is, every chapter that is gonna come out, there is little to no guarantee the chapters are gonna be finished, or that they're gonna be finished in timely manner. For the developer though, this format can be really good, or it can be quite bad. Making a game episodic means that when you release it, when it's gonna have the biggest hype, the game is unfinished. And that means the player might look at it and think, well, I'm gonna buy it when it fully comes out, only to forget about it and never buy the game. But on the positive side, if they're lucky and the YouTube and theory communities grab the game and start making theories about it, and you end up having some players making content about it, then you're gonna have a bunch of free advertisement with the release of every single chapter. Bendy and the Ink Machine did really good here, as during the release of every chapter, we had big YouTubers playing the latest chapter, which put focus back on the game, which would hopefully lead to more sales. But if the game doesn't get that attention, well, what then? Lost Records Bloom and Rage did not get that attention. While they do have a theory community on Reddit which have some interesting theories, the game has not gone mainstream. It has a relatively low player count, and that is a shame. And it's just not the popularity that it struggles with when it's episodic, it's also the pacing. When a game is designed to be episodic, it is important to leave each episode on something of a cliffhanger or a impactful moment, something that makes the player come back next time. And Lost Records did just that. But as I played it, even though I really liked the characters, I was interested in the story, I kept up having this nagging feeling that the game was dragging things out because it couldn't reveal everything in the first chapter, because then what would be left for the second one? The most notable frustration is a package that the game keeps on kinda showing in front of your face, going like, oh, we need to find out what's in the package. You are not finding out in chapter 1. And chapter 1 took me just around 7 hours, and I looked around and I had some fun with it, but I kept on being frustrated because I felt like I was simply being pulled along with things being teased in front of me, knowing that I would not be able to figure them out until April. And as I got further into the episode, it became more and more clear that we are not opening this box in this episode. And instead of it then remaining an interesting mystery, it became a source of frustration. Every time I saw the box, it was like, yeah, the box. Well, we're not opening that, are we? And I think it really diminishes from the narrative of the game. I think it would have been much better to simply release the full game in April with both tapes included, because I think I would not have felt the same frustration with things being a little bit slow if I hadn't constantly had the thought behind me that eventually this chapter was going to end and I would have to wait over a month to get to know the answers. And that is if I have time to play it when the second half comes out. While I am likely to be able to find time to do so, I don't know if I'm gonna find the motivation to do so, because right now I am invested in figuring out the story. The first chapter ended on a revelation I was not expecting, and in the last 2 hours of that chapter, things were really picking up and getting interesting, and I want to know what's gonna happen. But in late April, when I will finally have time to actually play the game, I don't know if I'm gonna have the same motivation. And I think the episodic format really does this game a disservice. Because a game being episodic in itself is not an issue. But if you split it into several different release dates, that is when we're gonna start having problems. And of course, if you're lucky and your game gets a strong following, then the episodic releases are great for the developer and the free advertisement it brings. But is it really a gamble worth taking? I think for Lost Records, it definitely was not. But that's of course just my opinion. Tell me, what do you think about games that are released episodically? Do you enjoy this type of release schedule, or does it turn you off the game? Let's talk about it down in the comments. And while you're down there, do the good YouTube stuff. And in the end, all I wanna say is takk fyrir að horfa og eigðu yndislegan dag.